broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the GALA webinar series. My name is Manuela Noske, and I'm the Communication Manager here at GALA. GALA is a global nonprofit trade association that serves an international community of organizations and individuals to enable communication and business across languages and cultures. We're headquartered in Seattle, Washington, in the United States. And today we're going to have a presentation by Pradipta Sarkar from Pocket Aces in India. Before we begin, I need to go over a few housekeeping items. We have muted everyone's lines to cut down on any background noise. If you experience any technical difficulties, you can let me know by using your chat box, and I will work with you to troubleshoot them. If you have a slow internet connection, your audio may be disrupted. If that happens, you can use the number listed on the GoToWebinar panel to call in using your own phone. We are making a recording of this presentation, and you will be able to find it following the presentation on GALA's global website. All participants will receive a link. If you have any questions for the presenter, please type them into your chat box. I will then try to unmute you so you can field your question live. So we're trying to get as many people to participate live today in this event as possible. Next, let me introduce our presenter. Pradipta Sarkar currently works for Pocket Aces, a digital entertainment company that is leveraging technology to create and distribute engaging content for the Indian millennial. She heads content for India's first and largest interactive game show platform, Loco. Pradipta has also served as managing editor of Filter Copy, another Pocket Aces channel, which is one of India's best-known digital entertainment brands. A digital content strategist, writer, editor, and also a former book publisher, Pradipta has previously worked with POP-Exocom, the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, HarperCollins Publishers India, and Rupa Publications India. Welcome, Pradipta, and I will hand it over to you now.
Good evening, everyone, or good morning. Manuela, thanks so much for the introduction. Just a little bit, as Manuela has explained what I do, I'm just going to give you a little bit of context about what my company does. So my company is called Pocket Aces Media, and we run 4 channels, which you can see on your screen right now. They're Filter Copy, Dice, Gobble, and Loco. So I look after Loco, which is our newest initiative in terms of being an owned platform. And we do, I'm going to talk a bit more about what Loco does a little while later into the presentation. So if everyone is all right with it, I'm just going to move ahead and start talking about what the topic is today. So this is just a screen. If all of you can see it, there are 8 lines on it, all of them in 8 different Indian languages. I'm saying my name is Pradipta Sarkar. I work for Pocket Aces Media. The first one that you see on your screen is Hindi. Next, it's Bengali, which is my mother tongue. Then you see Telugu. Then you see Marathi. Then you see Tamil. Then you see Kannada. Then you see Malayalam. And then you see Gujarati. In fact, of all the languages that are here on this screen, I speak and write and read only 3. I read a 4th one, and the other ones I use Google Translate to be able to write what I just spoke about. So this basically is an introduction for what the linguistic landscape in India currently is. With this population of 1.3 billion that we have 23 official languages, of which 1 is English, 22 Indian languages. There are 55 plus languages in use, and in some figures you will find that there are 30 plus languages in use. There are 55 plus because within this country of ours we have a lot of debate about, is my language a language or is it a dialect? And if you count all the dialects that we have more than 6,000 dialects that are spoken every day in India. If you look at the screen, there's a chart which is there, which speaks about Indian languages. And I'm using data points only for these 8 languages, these 8 Indian languages, which are 8 out of the 23, simply because these are the ones where there is most documented information. And a lot of my statistics are derived from a Google and KPMG study released for 2018, which is free to use and access for everyone, which gives a very detailed understanding and detailed analysis of what the linguistic landscape in India actually looks like. So my session today is sort of a summary of sort of anecdotal as well as experiential points about what I have discovered through my research for the work that I do. But this is one resource that I would actively recommend to anybody who is interested in trying to understand better what the linguistic landscape, especially for digital India, especially for the Indian internet user, is right now. So as you can see, we have 521 million speakers of Hindi as of 2016 in India. Compared to that, 254 million of those actually use Hindi as their primary language. Similarly for Bengali, similarly for Telugu, you have the statistics up there. When you talk about, just for some context, that 254 million Hindi language users, that's about, I think that's 75 to 80% of the population of the United States. So that's speakers in one language, and then you have the other speakers over there. Of course, it's easy for us to have speakers in so many languages because, you know, we have a lot of people who live in our country. Moving on, so we've defined Indian languages here. Indian language users are defined as people who are literate in their languages and who are able to read and write in their languages, in those languages as well. Just to clarify, the vastness of what the Indian population, what languages, exactly what segment of India uses, is actually undocumented, even with government census, even including the ones that were done in 2011, 2017. A lot of it is undocumented simply because your users are not always literate, and therefore not even able to fill out a form to sort of be able to clarify what their language usage status is. Moving on, this is something that is perhaps something some of you may know about, or a lot of you may not know about, that in India, a very tectonic shift in the usage in the digital landscape has happened over the last few years because of several external factors, which I'm going to talk about briefly on my next slide. But essentially, with the prices of phones having come down and with the decrease in data tariff, usage of mobile phones has gone up exponentially. And I'm going back to the previous slide, and more users have now started using their smartphone as their access or gateway to the world, not just for education or information, but also entertainment. Moving on, so the key growth drivers of Indian language internet users so far, and these are the most significant aspects of it, there are others too that I haven't covered over here, is the first thing is the reduced mobile data costs, players such as Reliance Jio. Just for some context, at this point, I, as a person who has considerable spending power compared to the rest of the population of India, for unlimited internet on my phone for the entire month, I pay 300 Indian rupees, which is less than $5, for unlimited internet on my phone with the ability to hotspot, with the ability to support multiple devices. As well, the other factors that have come into play is, this for me, for what is happening in the country, is the most significant factor. Reliance Jio has opened up the network, opened up the spectrum for lots of Indian users to come online simply by building better connectivity points all through the country. But what has also happened is, with one player having done something so significantly, other players, other internet service providers in the country have been forced to, in order to avoid a complete monopoly, have been forced to bring down their tariffs as well. And a lot of them are actually taken on financial loss, in fact, to be able to provide data at a cost at which users will still be using their services. The other things that have happened is with the government's drive for increasing connectivity all over the country, for electricity, for digital literacy, for literacy programs that have for digital literacy programs that have been developed over the last couple of years, especially the growth in overall internet penetration in India, including including broadband, including fiber cable, has increased significantly, and this penetration all through the country, given the vastness of it, geographically is expected to be more than 50% by 2021. Obviously, there is rising disposable income is a huge factor, because that's with that growing, more people can afford devices that are that have internet support. Alongside, we have I'm just one moment, please. I did something odd with my presentation. Along with this, across the digital ecosystem, with smartphones, with smartphones having language support, and with more and more digital players actually investing in digital language content, more users are enabled to come online and access content and services in their preferred languages, rather than being forced to use English as the only option that they have. Now, with if you notice, I had mentioned that the growth in smartphone users, 176 million new smartphone users are expected in the next 5 years. The number of internet users in India right now is around 350 million. That is including the phone and laptops, computers, etc. But 176 million new users are expected to come online just through their smartphones. Now, with this change, with data being more easily available, with people just coming online and using their phone, the way that consumer behavior has been in terms of the patterns of consumption throughout the day is shifting greatly. What I'm presenting to you right now, if you see to the left of your screen and to the right of your screen, is consumption habits between people who have been using traditional media and with people who are using a new media, where all and almost entirely all print and television consumption, radio consumption, book consumption is almost entirely being replaced by what people can do on their phone. Even news, even sort of knowledge building, such as education, such as just reading articles, consumption of TV shows, all of it, and even shopping online, from actual physical activity from going to a shop and buying, is more and more, all of it is moving online. So before I go on any further, I just wanted to mention that I would like to pause in the middle, and I would like to take questions from anyone if you do have questions, or and I'm available to address questions once the presentation is done as well. So in terms of India's internet users, this is, and I'm using the Google KPMG analysis of 2018 to provide this information, to provide the statistics to you. This is what the landscape looks like right now. We have in 2016, we had 409 million internet users. Not just in Indian languages, but using English as well. And this user number is expected to grow to 735 million by the end of 2021. So in 2 years, the total population of India, the total number of India's internet users is going to be more than double of the entire population of the USA. In terms of Indian language users, the number of users, which was 42 million only in 2011, grew to 234 million in 2016. In 2016, while there were 234 million Indian language internet users, the number of English language users of the internet was 175 million. Now, Indian language users right now, because of by virtue of a completely new demographic who is coming online, simply because they have better access, they have a better spending power now, and the costs have decreased significantly, more Indian language users are expected to come online compared to the number of English language users. So while the growth rate of Indian language internet users is expected to be 18% over the next couple of years, the growth rate for English language internet users, new users, is expected to be only 3%. So what will eventually happen is in the next 5 years, 9 out of every 10 new Indian user who is coming online is going to be a user who is using an Indian language to access the internet. So some of the key behaviors, which is current behaviors in Indian language, the factors in Indian language internet usage. 99% of Indian language users access the internet on their mobile. An interesting data point to note over here is in surveys conducted by many companies, including people who work with devices and people who work with data. Most Indian users find it difficult to use an English keyboard. So 99% of Indian language users access the internet on mobile, not exclusively on mobile, but definitely on mobile. 68% of users consider that local language content, content which is presented in a language that is their language of speaking at home of their lives, is more reliable than English content because of the whole trust factor that comes into play. That is, somebody who understands you, somebody who speaks your language is providing you with news, with information, with content. Of 35% of these internet users of the Indian languages use payment services, government services, etc., exclusively online. And rural Indian language users, including, there are very few, the percentage of English language usage in internet use in rural India is very low. And they have higher engagement rates, which is 530 minutes per week, compared to urban internet users, where they're spending 487 minutes per week. And of all kinds of adoption behaviors, chat applications, and new digital content initiatives, or even content varieties, have more than 90% adoption in among Indian language users. As a result of all of these factors taken into consideration, 50% of India's internet growth in the next 5 years is expected to actually come from rural India. Here, I'm going to stop for a moment, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of context about who this Indian user coming online is, because we're using the term rural India. So here, I would like to explain what we mean by rural India. These are places of India where infrastructure, in terms of whether it's educational, whether in terms of hospital services, all of these are infrastructure is weak. There are millions of villages all across India, and these are the places that we define as rural India, where not only is literacy in English extremely low, in fact, actual literacy is very low as well, where average daily income for families tend to be as little as $1 a day for a family of 4. As a result of which, a lot of people who are coming online in terms of saving and in terms of being able to purchase a smartphone and get a data connection, a lot of these are people who haven't actually used a computer before, or who haven't had access to a computer in any way at all. Is this a good time to pause for questions? Do we have any questions from anyone?
Yes, we do. Give me just one second here to bring it up. Do you think of such high, actually, you know what, I'm gonna, this is from Mubashir. Mubashir, you're self-muted, but maybe you wanna just ask your question directly to Pradipta. Can you unmute yourself?
Hi, Mubashir.
Yep, can you, Mubashir, looks like you unmuted. Oh, maybe it's not working. Do you think of such a high number of users?
Yes.
If they don't get provided content in their languages soon, then they will eventually get used to the English content instead.
This is something that if I would like to come back to later in the presentation as well, because I do talk about it. But actually, because I have some data points later on, but many players. There are players such as there are a lot of players who have started investing in digital content, which is catered towards vernacular as well. A big example, for instance, is a platform like Daily Hunt. Daily Hunt is a news and content portal. They primarily serve as a distribution platform for many vernacular, I think they have over 800 partners who provide their content in Daily Hunt. Daily Hunt is actually available in 23 different languages, in all the official languages in India. And their consumption numbers tend to be, their Daily Hunt's numbers tend to be about, I think, about 30 million a month, which is a significant number. Along with it, there are players such as ShareChat, who are predominantly who are entirely in Indian languages. They don't have English as a language option as well. And ShareChat saw about, from when it was launched a year and a half ago to versus late last year, ShareChat had about 125% growth in its user base. So I would say that perhaps the numbers in which the visibility about Indian vernacular language players, in terms of content creators, content providers, the visibility may be low, but people are actually investing in this area a lot, and that is expected to grow significantly.
Cool, thank you for that.
Okay.
I think so. We have a question about, machine translation into Indian languages. I don't know if you will be talking about that later, or you want to maybe field that later.
I would like to talk about that later, if that is all right. So, and then come back to the specific question as well.
Sure, that sounds good. All right.
All right. Okay. Moving on to the next one, which is, so at this point, this is expected to be the distribution of vernacular users in India, vernacular digital users in India by 2021, which you will notice that the number of Hindi users is expected to be the highest, because that is a significant portion of India does communicate in Hindi. But in terms of what research reveals, and again, I'm using that Google KPMG report. I keep bringing them up, not because I'm trying to provide them with branding, but they are considered very authoritative. So I'd like people to be informed about them. Anyway, sorry. So Tamil and Kannada have the highest propensity of adoption. I apologize for missing the word adoption on the slide over here, with 74% with 74% adoption and a new users coming on. For instance, so adoption over here is defined in terms of if there are 100 people who are using a content service in English, if that same content service begins in Tamil or Kannada, 74% of that number of that 100 people whose primary language actually is either of these move and adopt that new language service, language that is new for the provider but authentic for the user. They move to those languages. So similarly, Tamil and Kannada, then Telugu, Hindi, and Bengali. By 2021, there will be more Hindi internet users than English internet users in India, and a full 30% of the total vernacular user base would be made up of Marathi, Bengali, Tamil, and Telugu users. Now, with this being the situation, and why digital content players and other digital players are actually investing in creating content right now, it may be slow and it may not be very visible, is that with this, there is an immense revenue opportunity over here. Now, with low spending power, given the socioeconomic circumstances of the new users who are coming online, it may not seem like there is a big revenue opportunity, but the fact is that it is a huge number who is coming online, and overall, while the value of each basket size for a transaction, for a monetizable transaction for a user, the basket size may be very small, but if you look at the entire language user base, the ticket size is going to be really large. So this, now with more users who are coming online, the demand for language, the demand for content actually is increasing, and therefore for us, people who are content creators or who are digital players, we can't actually ignore what is happening in the vernacular landscape, even if we do not have, if we provide content in a vernacular language, in an Indian language, and there isn't high adoption of it, we cannot actually decide that we are not going to do this, because the way that this user base is growing, which is completely determined by factors of external, bigger macro factors, such as, like I mentioned, data costs, more people actually getting smartphones, to sort of not invest over here. For many players, like, we would consider it foolhardy to not actually build for that future. Moving on. So here this is collated data from various reports about what actually the spending power and defining the category of users in India overall, not just internet users, into three classes, which is affluent, which is about 49 million households in India, aspiring, which is 61 million households in India, and of course the next billion, which is the new users who are coming online and who are based out of rural India and who are extremely price sensitive, and who are, therefore, their expectation, their spends on their monetary spends are very low currently. Therefore, revenue for the next 5 years, despite the immense boom in the number of users, revenue will still be driven by usage and consumption habits of urban and wealthy households, because, you know, as a business, we have to sell, and we will sell to people who have money. Now, moving on to the next one. So a few of the key challenges, and here, Manuela, I will come to the challenge that we spoke about earlier about machine translation versus human translation. So if you will see this beautiful picture, I didn't make it, I just found it on the internet, which I used for one of my slides earlier. I'm repeating it not just because I had a blank space on the slide that I wanted to fill, but this is something that is very significant if you actually look at the iconography of it. In India, with the diversity of languages, with the cultural context everywhere is very different. I am a Bengali by birth. I was born in West Bengal. I spent 10 years, and I grew up there. I studied there. Then I moved to North India. I moved to New Delhi, which is India's capital, and where I worked for 9.5 years. And now I have moved to Mumbai, which is Western India, and I've been here for 1.5 years. My language of use in Bengali and the cultural context within which I lived was Bengali. In Northern India, my language of use had to become Hindi, because if I did not understand or speak Hindi, I had absolutely no way of connecting to the new place that I had moved to. In Mumbai, luckily, Hindi is in sufficient use, but outside of, say, the specific sort of digital and entertainment space I work in, the predominant language and cultural context is actually Marathi. So here, localization in the form of translation, and this is where I would like to talk about, because we haven't had the most successful experiences with machine translation over here. When a machine translation in Indian languages, so far to my experience, tends to be extremely mechanical, and it tends to just be a literal translation of words. For instance, if you think about the very popular phrase such as turning a blind eye to something, In Bengali, that translates to, if I use a literal translation, it translates to kauke kana chokh dekhano. In Hindi, the literal translation of that is kisi ko andha aankh dikhana, which in those languages, when you think about, and I just did a literal translation of the words, and so far, unfortunately, and this may be my lack of exposure, but my experiences of machine translation so far has been limited to this scenario. Those sentences make absolutely no sense. There is no cultural reference. There is no contextual understanding of what that actually means.
So there is a question here, Pradipta. So what companies are taking machine translation into Indian languages and servicing those really seriously? Do you know?
If I don't have a ready list for you right now, because I would only be able to name a couple of companies, which I think is kind of unfair because there are more people doing more work. But Manuela, if it is okay for you, I can do some research on this and actually send on the information later to pass on to users, to the whoever's asking the question. Would that be all right?
Sure. Thank you very much. Yeah, it just all seems to form a pattern in terms of, companies not having woken up to the reality of what's happening in India, right?
Yes,
the amazing use of all of these vernacular languages in everyday life. So yeah, I mean, you think that somebody would have been right there.
No, and the thing is, so when I speak both Bengali and Hindi fluently. But all my idioms, all my metaphors are completely different. Like a Hindi metaphor that I might use. For instance, there is a very, and Manuela, you may have heard this in Kuala Lumpur because my co-presenter Anuradha, she'd used this. There is this Hindi saying, which is, "Kos par pani badle, char kos par vani," which basically means that with every mile, the taste of water changes in India. With every 4 miles, the language changes. With this, and which is beautiful with the rhythm and the rhyme. It is it's a beautiful metaphor to sort of explain what the diversity of language and what the diversity of geography in this country is. But there is absolutely no equivalent of that thought expressed in exactly that way in Bengali.
Yeah.
So, and I need a lot more words to be able to actually explain this in English as well, right? And I can't make it as beautiful and as, like scan so perfectly and so sound so poetic either.
Nice.
Yeah. So if you look at this script and language support, now 70% of Indian, so this is something that I've mentioned earlier, where 70% of Indian language users find it difficult to use English keyboards. But the government of India right now has mandated that smartphones that are sold in India should be Indian language enabled, which means they are supposed to have script support. But here I'm going to, while I mention this, I'm just going to quickly scroll back up to one of my early slides. These are what Indian scripts look like, and do you see in even the second line over here is written in Bengali? So I'm going to talk about it because that's my mother tongue, so I'm the most familiar with it. It says Amar Nam. The third word over there, do you see like the shape with a little squiggle at the bottom of it? That's a compressed version of 2 consonants and a vowel, which is pr. That's the first syllable. And if I want to put if I wanted to say play, that first letter would look completely different because the L, which indicates the L, gets added into that letter. And so that first letter itself would change completely. So while we say script support is important and critical, and while there is a lot of effort being made into script support being provided to devices, the fact of using a vernacular keyboard in itself is a minefield of complications for users, because because these are new users who are coming online, and because eventually script support can only handle a particular number of characters, These complex characters, which are a combination of letters and sounds, they are not actually defined on the keyboards. And when you type them in, you have to look at a keyboard of like, you have to, even though you're using an Indic keyboard in your language, you're essentially referring to a mind map of an endless possible of combinations that can be created in your native script based on how the language operates. And okay, so a few other factors that I'm coming to, and it's just that optimization of content, despite the fact that more people have access to data, but they still have access to 3G or even 2G internet, all the support that has been, the infrastructure that has been built across India. But until more and more investment is put into sort of, and here I'm going to use something which may sound extremely silly, but I hope you understand what I mean, like more towers being put up to create access points. I feel like I'm talking about somebody who does not understand infrastructure at all, and I hope everybody knows what I mean. But until more players have invested in improving a tech architecture for internet support and more spectrum is freed up as well, people are still going to have slow and low data. And people are also, because they're just coming online, and people are purchasing smartphones which cost maybe $50 to $100 or even less. Support of screen resolution, screen sizes, etc., are very complex and have to be, and require a lot of, you need for your content or your product to be not only be responsive, but also very, very adaptive for actual clarity and visibility across the kinds of devices that you're building. If you may have a video which you broadcast, which you shoot and which you would like to broadcast in, say, in 4K, but the point is that if your content is actually not responsive and adaptive in terms of somebody who is also on, 360 pixels of data range, if they are not able to see it, if they are not able to view it, you will lose that user, because all they will see is like this little circle which is buffering all through. So optimization of not just content, but of services as well, to minimize data consumption. And again, these low-end phones which people are purchasing have very little physical memory space. I hope that everybody has heard of Google's, Files Go. That Google had, Files Go, that Google had to launch for their Android devices, where I think this was a big news and trending for several days in India, at least, in early 2018, where lots of smartphones in India had simply stopped working, and people didn't know why would they not work, why would Android systems freeze. And then they discovered the peculiar habit that, and this was Google who discovered it, that Indians love sending messages on WhatsApp every day to lots of people. So they would send a whole lot of good morning motivational messages to hundreds of people, who would always save these messages, and then that would eat up the physical memory capacity of the phone's device and make the entire Android OS completely freeze. So Google actually came up and developed their Files Go application specifically to get rid of WhatsApp messages that have been downloaded by default on your phone. So the other thing, so that's why sort of like, low bandwidth and low memory consumption products are extremely, extremely valuable. You may have an amazing product, but if your product is, it's 150 MB instead of 15 MB in size, the moment your user's phone slows down a little bit, they have to keep restarting it for it to work. The first thing to go from it will be your product. They want WhatsApp. Users need WhatsApp because they want to communicate with everybody. They want chat applications. If your product is not optimized for actual low memory consumption, your product is not valuable to the user. It's not adding value to the user. In fact, your product is causing problems for them. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, touch on briefly, and this is, I think, this is a fairly complex point that I've tried to compress into one bullet point. So please forgive me for that. Like I mentioned, a lot of the new users in vernacular languages who are coming online are not just not literate in English, but actually not literate. These are people who have not been to school, who haven't been to college. And in many cases, they do not necessarily even know how to write properly or put in correctly spelled search terms in their languages into Google. So in 30% of Google searches in India, and this is according to Google's reports, were voice searches, which means that enabling voice support is a critical need for players in the content space, and as well as voice support and other technological advancements that may actually help you skip the necessity for text altogether. And again, the problem of the newness of the user, which is there is actually very little structured data that is available. Like Manuela, this also covers the other question about, who are translators or who are language services in India who are actually investing in machine language thoroughly, right? This is the chicken and egg problem, right? Machine translations are not getting better because there exists no lexical, like no dictionary, no exhaustive dictionary, no exhaustive vocabulary of different Indian languages and different dialects. Because it doesn't exist, machine translations tend to be very mechanical and automated and not actually useful to users. And therefore, users are not using machine translation and therefore investing in custom solutions.
So yeah, it sounds like the basic language resources are missing for anybody to develop good machine translation on. Yeah.
Yes, the basic language resources actually don't exist for the entire country.
Yeah.
We do not have, like, our government does not have archives of like entire there was a big initiative that was made by was funded by the government for the Indian Institute of Technology for actually creating this vocabulary of different Indian languages. But that was a project that was really talked about when it launched, and then it kind of disappeared. I think people are just exhausted at the thought of how much work they have to do. Yeah. But of course, that work is necessary.
Yes, so it sounds like great opportunities to me.
Yes, it is. If you're going to take it really seriously, there is a scope for a lot of opportunity. So I'm just going to now quickly move on to a little bit more detail, which sort of, like you said, create opportunities and sort of potential ways that people can be using this. I know that we have only 15 minutes left for this, correct?
That's right, yeah. And we have just a few questions, but maybe we want to push those to the end.
Okay, so then I'm just going to quickly go through the next few slides that I have, and then just make sure that we have at least 5 minutes for questions, if that's okay. So in terms of this, and I will be sending, so these statistics will be available to everyone who's dialed in for this later on as well. In terms of what this is a chart of what the mature segments of Indian language internet users, which is the chart to the left, which is sort of highlighted in pale blue, versus what the emerging segments are. If you will see the mature segments, which are sort of chat applications, digital entertainment, social media, digital news, these are for which there actually exists content and players have been putting in effort. They have had the highest adoption rate so far, but over the next few years, the relative adoption rate for other things which are now available online is sort of digital classifieds, online government services, and this is the government has been putting actually been investing in making sure that services are available online in regional languages and not just at the physical government offices where you have to go to do documentation and other kind of work. These are expected to be the biggest drivers of biggest areas where people will see growth in terms of use. And like I had perhaps mentioned before, chat applications at this point, chat applications and digital entertainment has more than 90% adoption rate. So in this situation, I'm speaking specifically about entertainment because that's something that I have more visibility on more awareness of. That's where I work in. So now if you look at it like live, sorry, it should be in my headline, and I'm so sorry for this. It should say live formats and like LIVE and not LIFE. Live formats offer a lot of growth potential with the phone actually replacing the TV for most users, or in fact being the first entry point for any kind of access at all. With when the IPL, the Indian Premier League, which is on currently, when it started out, it had like immense audience on TV, right? And it's one of the biggest, most watched programs in India all through the year. But with the Vivo IPL on Hotstar, which launched only about 3 years ago, which is a complete digital platform, the numbers, as you will see, the adoption, if you compare with TV has had 11 years to grow. Whereas in 3 years, Hotstar's user numbers for the IPL final is just almost comparable. So with this and interactivity, in terms of like interactivity can provide a lot of value to users. One of the ways in which you can actually, which you can overcome the challenges of language are more visual formats, such as watching a game and watching a sports match and being able to participate in a conversation about it, being able to where, a lot of what happens with the content, it becomes UGC because user generated, because people are participating that way. And when you're watching a video, you have more awareness of what is happening because you can actually understand from what you see on screen rather than listening to content in a different language versus reading content in a different language, which requires way more effort. So in that space where I spoke about, like we work in Loco. So Loco is a game show platform. So we've launched just a year and a half, less than a year and a half ago. We've had more than 16 million downloads. We see 150,000 users on the app every day. We have more than a million monthly unique users. And we actually available in 6 different languages, English plus Hindi, Marathi, Bengali, Tamil, and Telugu. Now, what is super interesting for us is that with something like Loco, we've tried to create an intersection of entertainment, gaming, social and content. We have, and most of our, if you can see on the top left hand, if you can see this little sort of map with orange glowing dots, that's actually a heat map for our users across the country. So we've actually been able to achieve pan-India adoption in certain ways, even though, say, the numbers, when you think about 150,000 users compared to the 1.3 billion that we have in the country, that may not seem like a lot, but for us, this is phenomenal because we actually see pan-India adoption. If you see our top cities, that we have, that I've mentioned on this little graph over here, demographic location, New Delhi is the only metro city, Lucknow, Pune, Indore, Jaipur, with heavy focus on northern and western India, and northwestern India. It's still, these are tier 2, tier 3 cities where this new segment of users who are coming online are users who are actually playing in Hindi and not so much in English. Now, for us, the new kind of what we are trying to do is we're trying to solve this problem of how do you provide value to users and how do you tackle the challenges of language is by actually building a platform where multiple formats are available to users. So we have Loco Quiz, which is our flagship game, which is available in 6 different languages, like I mentioned. We have Loco League, which is a sports predictor game that's available in Hindi and English. We have Loco Arena. This for us is super interesting because it's a casual gaming platform where people come and play games like Bubble Shooter, like Tetris, etc., which has shown phenomenal growth for our user base by virtue of simply being something that just requires cognitive ability and is not dependent in any way on your linguistic ability at all. So for us, and this is just a snapshot of, I've tried to show the languages that we have. and what are the kinds of sort of like how things are broadcast. So if I'm just going back one screen, so this is what a quiz show, if you look at the image that I have on the left, and the center screen or center of that is a question in English versus a language, a player, and this is a live show that is happening. A user who has chosen Tamil as their language will actually see the question in Tamil. And if you see the diversity of backgrounds or the kind of people who are playing it and the engagement, this is the pan-India community that I was talking about. So one thing, the reason why I've spoken sort of like extensively about logo, not just as a marketing pitch for my company, is because for us, what is very, very interesting is the way that we are actually trying to overcome linguistic barriers, because as I said, that it is not necessarily feasible for us to provide language support for everything, because we can't even do 23 languages. We kind of, when we started in 6 languages, and when we decided to do 5 of them were going to be different regional languages, of which I speak and read only 3 and not the other 2 at all. It was a huge challenge for us. And we were also forced to recognize that in order to be able to use and provide value to the new users who are coming online, sometimes as companies, if we do not have the capacity to provide truly localized, truly contextual vernacular experiences for our users, we have to think about things which actually don't depend on language as well. So there are many ways to solve this. You can provide value to a user by being relevant to their culture, even if you are not speaking their language. With that, I think I'm at the end of everything that I prepared.
Thank you so much, Radhika. Thank you. It's just one question popping up here. How do you create that cultural relevance? I mean, what do you do concretely? I mean, are you changing images, colors? How do you give them what they're looking for?
So for in certain ways for us, when we do, so we have done this, although we haven't done it regularly, but we will be doing it, is when we create, say, okay, so I'm just going to go back to the slide because it provides better relevance. You have this question, which is what percentage of the world's population lives in Asia, correct? Mm-hmm. But we've also done, when we've tried to cater to specific demographics, some of the things that we've tried is we've used internal resources and tied up with external partners. For instance, we've had a team of people, a group of people who actually speak Tamil, who live in Tamil Nadu, who are aware of the cultural context, provide and create the content in that original language, and which is the next slide that you see, which is sort of like a Tamil game that you see, mm-hmm. and create that content, and therefore, and then allow us, and we have, for other users who are seeing it in other languages, we have then translated it into English for them.
I see. So you have local content creators that you work with.
Yes. So these are things that we have explored, because at the end of the day, like, while we want to access a lot of users, but if we can't provide value to users, right? Like I said, like some idioms have no meaning in English, idioms have no meaning in other languages, sort of like an obscure, actually, while, you know, I may want to do a quiz on, say, Avengers Endgame, since it's coming out tomorrow and I'm super excited about it. But if I were to do a quiz about that and have it directly translated into many languages, somebody who's sitting in a village somewhere and is playing my game, this will have no value whatsoever for them, because there is no relevance. So if I would like to give them entertainment content that is relevant to them, I do need to find new partners who are able to think and therefore create content that has relevance. So that's one of the things that we've done. We've tried, experimented with external models of content creators and like partnered with other people with a certain degree of assurance of quality and accuracy to give us content.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And I don't know if you had any last slide, but you know, one of the questions here is how are non-Indian companies responding to this enormous growth potential? I mean, you occasionally read, oh, Amazon is now offering something, you know, in Indic language. It seems to always come as an afterthought. What's your perception, from the local place? How are the big companies, big American, European companies, reacting and responding?
Well, to be fair with Amazon, I think even though it may seem like an afterthought, but Amazon, and especially so Amazon, like I'm focusing on what they've been doing in terms of e-tail, right? Amazon actually has been investing in getting regional sellers, onboarding them on their platform for a while, despite the fact that there may not have been immense growth over there. And their Amazon actually is not doing too badly.
Yes, I have heard that the service is better in India than in the United States.
Yes, because Amazon actually has spent a lot of time investing in the different parts of India. I think it just takes a huge degree of foresight. Like for instance, I prefer using Amazon over anywhere because Amazon delivers as efficiently to me when I'm in Mumbai versus if I were to be sitting in sort of a suburban West Bengal. It may take a day longer, but my delivery service is going to be just as efficient.
Yeah.
So big players. So in terms of big players, as you may know, like Netflix, for instance, has invested in a lot of regional language programming, right? And so we had from one of our sister channels, Dice Media, one of our web series, Little Things, was signed up last year by Netflix as a Netflix original. But one of the what a brilliant thing, apart from the fact that we were on Netflix, which is always super cool. Hey, like, who gets to be there? Is one of the things that happened was Netflix also invested in not just subtitling, but actual voiceover and dubbing in 5 different Indian languages, which had we been doing as an independent digital media company, we don't have the resources, or we don't have the money to be able to do that. But Netflix has done that, so they've invested a lot in regional language programming. Amazon Prime Original is again investing in regional language programming. So I think some of the big players are thinking about this and they are moving and investing, but the world as a whole, one of the factors here is that despite all the scope for growth, like I said, revenue over the next few years, in the next 5 years, is definitely going to be driven by what's happening with the urban masses, right? So at the end of the day, it's going to be players who are not only aware of what is happening in the landscape, which a lot of people are, but they have to be confident about being in it for the long haul, that you may not actually profit for the next 5 years, that your profits may only show, it may only affect your bottom line once another 3 or 4 years have gone.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Pradeepa. We're just about out of time. We have just a minute left. So I don't know if you've got any closing words. No,
I'm just I'm really happy to be here. And just thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. This was really interesting, Pradeepa. Thanks for taking the time late in the day for you. Thank you to all of our audience members for joining us. And we would really appreciate it if you could take just a moment to give us your feedback on today's session using the post-event survey. It's short, but your perspectives and your input really help us to continue to refine the webinar program. And with that, I wish you good night, Pradeepa, and probably good day to most of the listeners. And I look forward to seeing you at another webinar soon. Thank you and bye-bye.